Billie Keith, Mason City, Iowa. Yeah, she basically, she had some chest pain one day, pulled some rib cartilage and had a chest x-ray and they showed that her heart was enlarged. And I actually work in radiology, supervise imaging clinic, and had a conversation with the radiologist, could see her heart was enlarged, and went back to the pediatrician, and he's like, well, pediatric cardiologist comes again in a couple weeks. We'll just see him then. I'm like, no, she has something going on. Like, we'll be here Thursday when he comes in. He took out a diagram and he said, well, they did the EKG and they're going to do the echo. It could be one of three things. You don't want it to be this thing. And then he just looked, he was of Indian descent, and he just looked pale, ashen, sick. And he just said, I'm really sorry, but this is what it is. And we just sat in the room and just cried. And you never forget the room, what they say, the diagram. I mean, you remember all of that. So you walked in with a child that was healthy for 8 years. Actually, her traveling soccer teams, playing softball, all the sports, doing gymnastics, competing, cheerleading, and then to have them say, there's probably nothing they can do for her, but you're going to have to go straight up to Mayo Clinic and just pack your bags. You're probably going to be up there for months. And so we're like, oh my gosh. So he's talking to Mayo Clinic at 6 o'clock at night. And they said, come up the next day. And so they said, they came out to the waiting room and said, how come this child's never been to the doctor before? How come they didn't catch this before she was 8? Because hers was a secondary to a heart condition. And so if that would have been caught younger, she probably would have never developed pulmonary hypertension. So I know a lot of kids don't know why they have it, but she knows, and hers was preventable, really. But at that point, she was severe. Her pressures were around in about 100. They wanted to do a cardiac cath the following Monday, I think. This was a Friday, the first day that we were up there. And so basically they said, there's nothing we can do for these kids. They said, we only really see this in third world countries where the kid had no medical treatment and where it progressed to this point. And they said, come back and we'll do the cath and see if there's anything we could do. So we came back Monday, and her pressures were high, her resistance was high, and they just said, you're probably just going to have to take her home and love her. The average lifespan for a child is about 1 to 3 years. And but we really don't think there's anything that we could do for her. If we do some surgery, she's probably not going to make it. There's no medicines that are going to help her. And so if you put her through all these medical interventions, you're probably not going to prolong her life, and you're actually going to decrease the quality of her life, making her go through all these things. So that's a tough day leaving the hospital with that prognosis. And so, but they said they wanted to talk to some experts that had been around a while and see if they could find some other experts around the country. So thank God they found Dr. Barst, our angel. So anyway, they found Dr. Barst, and so we flew out and saw her, and she said, don't just look at the numbers, like, look at this girl, she's playing soccer, she's competing and stuff. You're counting her out. She said, there's hope. And she looked right at her and she said, you're not going to live like a sick kid. She said, you're going to run this show. It's your body. You are going to control the pulmonary hypertension. You're not going to sit bubble wrapped on a couch. You're going to go live your life. But she said, I'm not going to just keep you alive because I can. So she said it's a progressive disease. I'm not going to put you in the hospital and hook you up to all these machines and just keep you alive forever because we can. But you're going to live a life doing what you want, and you're going to be in control of that. So, but she didn't talk to us when we went and saw Dr. Barst. She just looked straight at Brooke. She just straight to her, and just, I think that seeing her and giving her that empowerment, that's how she grew up, being able to advocate for herself. So she had to switch schools, and she had to go to school in a different town because the principal and the PE teacher were giving her detentions for not running labs. And so we think this is going to be an easy conversation. It turns into months. And Dr. Berman, by then Dr. Barst had retired, and Dr. Berman said, we're done. So she had to stay home for a week and a half. For 10 days, she had no school until she could get into another school. And then it was in a different town. So she had no busing, and she had to go away from her friends, away from her family, away from the school district her siblings were in. And she had to learn how to advocate, for herself. And I think that Dr. Barst really helped empower her to do those things and be able to advocate for herself. And it was a long, hard road. She's had 2 heart surgeries, a life flight for tachycardia. We've had, I think, about 17 trips to New York in 9 years. She has doctors in 3 states, Iowa, and then emergencies, we go to Mayo Clinic, and then we still go to New York every 6 months. So I think for pediatric patients, it's really important to find a pediatric pulmonary hypertension specialist. So Brooke's going to be 18. She's going to be an adult, but I'm always going to advocate for the kids. I'm going to advocate for the adults too. But in Iowa, maybe there's a handful of adults, and they meet and they have each other. And we looked for a support group early on, and there were no kids. So it was maybe a handful of adults that were a few hours away. So it wasn't very helpful to us. So when she got 5 years out, I thought, oh my God, they only gave her 1 to 3 years to live. Now she's 12, we're 5 years out, and she's never met another person with pulmonary hypertension. So in New York, you go and there's a heart center. You don't know which other kids maybe have it, but it's a really small clinic. And so she hadn't really met anybody else. So we went to Orlando, and the very first people we saw on the elevator were the Dokes, Christina and Katie Doke. And so they were the very first ones, and they went off to get coffee. And then, Rainey was there, and we saw her again in Chicago. And then we met Doreen and Caudry in New York. And these kids went through transplants. Several kids that we've met have passed away. It's just, it's a hard, tough disease. And I think they look great, they look perfect, and it's really hard to see what's going on beneath that and how much they've been through and how much they have to fight to stay looking like that and advocate. But I think the biggest way that I try to advocate for PH is we haven't done any real big fundraisers and stuff. We participate sometimes from afar in some of that, but mostly we try to meet the psychosocial needs, because we know what it feels like to live in rural Iowa and be completely isolated. So we started sending packages like in December. So it started out with, I think, 3 countries, and then last year we were at 5 countries. And so I think the psychosocial part is important. You have to have the body, mind, and spirit all have to be healthy. And, if you treat all of those things. So we try to do more that way for kids. But I think when parents first, I've had parents call me, and I say the most important thing is you need to get to a pediatric pulmonary hypertension specialist. So most adults can find one close by. So we were within a couple hours of one. But the pediatric one, now you're talking probably not within 12 hours, of one. So it's a big difference of driving a couple hours to find a specialist and having to go 12 hours or, 1,000 miles. Mayo Clinic told us there's nothing they could do. She would be here for 1 to 3 years. And if we wouldn't have got to Dr. Barst, they would have been absolutely right. They would have been right, because without treatment, she wouldn't be doing as well. Once she started getting treatment, her pressures just came down and she was more active. She used to get lower lips, she used to get more short of breath, she used to have more chest pain, and she's progressively actually got better. And they pretty much from the beginning said, today is the best day you're going to feel the whole rest of your life, because this is a progressive disease. You're going to continually get worse. And just her last cath last June, a year ago, her pressures were in the 30s. And they are like, we didn't even do any medication changes. Like, what happened? How did that happen? And we don't even know, but like she said, she's exercising more. She has maybe an anti-inflammatory diet, just living positively. I think just all of that stuff adds up. But sometimes modern medicine, I think these kids are pioneers. These medicines are all new. They don't know now. They're writing their own story.